So picture this. You have a highly profitable business. You've poured your blood, sweat, and tears into it for like a decade or more.
Right, the classic founder story.
Exactly. And you've strung together 5 straight years of consistent upward revenue growth. I mean, your margins are fantastic.
Yep, the dream scenario.
Right. So because of all that, you naturally assume that when you go to market, a buyer is going to pay a top dollar for it. You sit down at the negotiation table with a private equity firm, fully expecting this massive $50 million win. You are mentally picking out the beach house, and then out of nowhere, you get blindsided by a 20 to 30% discount on your valuation. Millions of dollars just wiped off the table in an instant.
It's devastating.
It really is. And you're left sitting there wondering, why did this just happen? So welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're looking at the exact moment when everything you think you know about your company's value gets turned upside down and how to make sure you never find yourself in that seat.
It is a brutal reality check. And honestly, we see it happen far more often than people realize.
Which is wild to me.
Yeah, but the reason an owner gets hit with that massive discount comes down to a foundational truth in our industry, something that is, well, entirely misunderstood by the vast majority of founders. Private equity firms, strategic acquirers, wait, let me rephrase that. They do not buy businesses. They buy transferable cash flows.
Okay, let's unpack this because I'm struggling with this right out of the gate. If my margins are great, if my revenue is climbing, and I have the tax returns to prove it, isn't that ironclad proof of a great business?
You would think so, right?
Like, why wouldn't a buyer just look at that incredible past performance and cut the check? The numbers are right there in black and white.
Because valuation is not about what the business has done. Valuation is entirely about whether the business can sustain that exact same performance after you, the owner, leave the building.
Oh, wow.
Right. Buyers are looking at a future where you are no longer making the magic happen. So if you rely completely on your past financial statements, you're walking into a massive trap.
Because you're the one who created those statements.
Exactly. A business that depends entirely on its owner is not a transferable asset.
Yeah.
It is just a very high-paying job with a valuation multiple attached to it.
Oof, a job with a valuation multiple attached. That hits hard.
It's meant to.
But let's look at the mechanics of this, because I want to understand why there is such a massive disconnect between what the owner sees on their spreadsheets and what the buyer actually sees during the negotiation.
Well, it comes down to understanding the fundamental difference between financial due diligence and operational due diligence.
Okay, break that down for us.
So when an owner gets ready to sell, they usually focus all their energy on the financial due diligence. That process merely confirms the numbers. It basically ensures you aren't lying about your revenue or your EBITDA.
Right, your earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization.
Exactly. It tells the buyer what the business earned historically. But, and this is the key, it tells them absolutely nothing about whether the business can keep earning that money after the deal closes.
So confusing the two is, well, it's like looking at a car's speedometer to see how fast it went yesterday, without checking if there's actually an engine under the hood to make it run tomorrow.
That is a fantastic way to look at it.
Like, you have a documented record of going 100 miles an hour, but if you, the founder, are essentially the engine, the buyer is basically paying for an empty shell the moment you step away.
Spot on. And operational due diligence examines that exact gap. It lifts the hood to look at the engine. Buyers are testing the space between what the business looks like on paper and how it actually functions without the owner in the room pulling all the levers.
And I imagine they are very good at finding that gap.
Oh, they see the difference immediately. I mean, it is literally their job to see it.
Yeah.
But most owners are completely unprepared for it.
Look, if you're listening to this, your ego is probably flaring up a bit right now because you built this company on your back. In the early days, a founder has to be the dictator and the primary salesperson just to survive, It's natural to feel like your personal touch is your secret weapon. Are buyers really punishing founders for the exact hustle that built the company in the first place?
They aren't punishing the hustle. They are pricing the risk.
Pricing the risk, okay.
Yeah, because to a founder, being deeply involved feels like dedication. But to a buyer, your personal touch is a massive operational liability. If you are the only one who knows how to fix the engine, the car is worthless to them without you.
Right. And this theoretical gap becomes very real very fast when you get into a boardroom. Let's look at a specific case from our files to illustrate how this actually plays out.
Yeah, let's do it.
So we have this story of a manufacturing owner. Incredible business on the surface. He is generating a very healthy $8 million in EBITDA.
A great number.
Right. The CPA is happy, the books are spotless, margins are incredibly strong. He understandably expects a valuation of $50 million from an interested private equity firm.
And honestly, on paper, a $50 million valuation for $8 million in EBITDA makes total sense. The historical financial due diligence probably flew by without a single red flag.
The spreadsheets looked beautiful.
Beautiful. Perfect.
But then the buyer begins the operational due diligence. They start looking under the hood. What happens?
The reality check hits like a freight train.
Oh, man.
Yeah, the buyer uncovered a completely different story from what the financials were telling them. First, they found out that the owner personally managed the relationships with the top 3 customers.
Red flag number 1.
Big time. Second, the existing management team had zero profit and loss authority, like they had never been trusted to manage the actual financial levers of their own departments.
Wow. Okay, what else?
Third, critical pricing logic and supplier knowledge lived entirely in the owner's head. And fourth, there was absolutely no documented governance structure.
So no playbooks, no formal meeting structures, just the owner playing air traffic controller for the entire company.
Exactly. And because of those operational gaps, the private equity firm slashed their offer down to $35 million.
Oh.
Yeah. He lost $15 million in valuation in the blink of an eye.
Just gone. And I think the most painful part of this story isn't even just the lost money, it's the total lack of leverage.
Oh, absolutely.
Because the owner had absolutely no data to push back with. He discovered these massive operational gaps during the negotiation itself. You can't suddenly build a robust management team and institutionalize a decade of client relationships during a 2-week due diligence window.
No, you can't. Which means he was completely defenseless.
Yeah.
His mistake wasn't just poor preparation, though. His mistake was failing to understand the specific criteria the buyer was testing.
Right.
Buyers aren't just walking around the office getting a vibe for how things run. They have a rigorous framework.
They are running a specific diagnostic on that engine.
Yes, exactly.
So how does a founder possibly prove their absence won't tank the company? Like, what is the buyer's actual measuring stick here?
They measure 4 specific pillars. Let's walk through them, because if you are planning to exit, this is the exact lens you need to be looking through today.
Okay, let's hear them. Pillar number 1.
The first pillar is leadership independence. Buyers need to know if the management team can run the business without the owner making every single call.
So everyday decisions.
Right. Have these managers been tested with real authority? Do they have the confidence of the employees and, the clients?
Going back to the car metaphor, this is basically checking if anyone else in the building knows how to change the oil, or if you are literally the only mechanic on the payroll.
Yes. If you are the sole decision maker, the buyer sees a glaring red flag.
Because the business stops if you get sick.
A massive red flag. And if your leadership team is just a group of glorified order takers, the buyer has 2 options. They will either severely discount the valuation, like we saw in the manufacturing story, or they will force a lengthy earnout.
Oh, let's clarify that, because earnout sounds harmless, maybe even like a bonus, but the reality is brutal.
It really is.
Essentially, an earnout means golden handcuffs. You thought you were selling the business to retire to a beach, but instead you're stuck working for your new boss for 3 to 5 years, hitting aggressive performance targets just to get the money you thought you had already earned on day 1.
It is the ultimate trap for a burned-out founder. The buyer basically locks you in the business to ensure the cash flow doesn't evaporate.
Okay, so that's leadership independence. What's the second pillar?
The second pillar buyer's test is client institutionalization.
Oh, this is where it gets really interesting. Because if your top client is calling your personal cell phone while you're at your kid's soccer game to complain about a shipping delay,
Yep.
you don't own a transferable business. You own a very stressful, high-paying job.
It's funny, but it is devastating in a negotiation.
Yeah.
I mean, buyers look deeply at client concentration, sure, but they also look at relationship depth with the company itself, not the individual founder.
Okay, so does the client love the company, or do they just love Bob, the founder?
Exactly. Think about it. If you leave and those top clients feel like their primary connection to the business just walked out the door, the buyer assumes those clients are going to walk out too. They are pricing in the immediate loss of those relationships.
Which makes total sense from their perspective. And that naturally leads to the third pillar, knowledge systems. This is all about the danger of undocumented knowledge, right? Are we talking about standard operating procedures here, or is it deeper than that?
It is much deeper. It's the strategic context, the intricate pricing logic, the history of why certain decisions were made, or, the nuanced vendor relationship data.
Okay, give me an example.
Well, does all of that live in a searchable, accessible system? Or does it just live in the founder's head?
Right. I can picture a private equity firm asking for the CRM, opening it up, and finding it completely empty.
Oh, it happens all the time.
You ask a founder why a certain vendor gets a 4% discount while everyone else gets 2%, and the answer is usually, oh, well, back in 2018, Dave helped me out of a jam with a late shipment, so we give him a break.
Right, but here's the catch. When the why behind those crucial business decisions leaves when you leave, the business instantly becomes dumber the second your key card stops working.
The business becomes dumber. I love that phrasing.
It's true. And investors view that as a major capability loss at the exact moment of sale.
Oh, yeah.
They just cannot tolerate that kind of risk.
Okay, so we have leadership independence, client institutionalization, knowledge systems. What completes the diagnostic?
The fourth pillar is governance structure. This is the actual decision-making framework of the business.
Like the operating system.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are there clear, documented roles? Are there regular leadership meetings with set agendas? Is there a documented strategic planning process that operates independent of the owner's whims?
Because if every big move, every hire, every capital expenditure requires the owner's stamp of approval, you are essentially trying to sell a dictatorship without the dictator.
Yeah.
It just collapses into a power vacuum.
It does. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, it brings us back to predictability. Investors do not guess about these four areas. They have rigorous matrices and scorecards for every single one of them.
But the owners don't.
Exactly. The problem is owners are out there guessing. They look at their bank account, see healthy margins, and guess that their business is ready.
So how do we flip this dynamic? Because right now, it sounds like the buyer holds all the cards. How does an owner avoid the $15 million haircut and actually take control of this process?
You pivot from being on the defensive to playing offense. And you do that by measuring your own operational readiness long before a buyer ever shows up.
Not guessing, start measuring. Let's do a quick mental check for the listener right now.
Let's do it.
Ask yourself honestly, would your business survive if you left for 90 days? Just unplugged, no email, no cell phone. Have you ever actually tested being unavailable?
Most haven't.
Right. Does your management team make significant needle-moving decisions without your approval? Do key clients have deep relationships with anyone else at your company besides you? If you can't confidently answer yes to those, the buyers will see the gap and they will price it right into their offer.
This is why the mechanics of leverage are so important. It is the entire reason we built our core client journey around the business transition readiness assessment.
Let's talk about that assessment.
So what this assessment does is evaluate your business against the exact same framework, those four pillars
Right.
that private equity firms use in their operational due diligence. It shows you what buyers will find before they find it.
So instead of this being a theoretical exercise, it is about creating tangible leverage. Explain how having this assessment actually changes the dynamic in the boardroom.
Well, think about the manufacturing owner who lost $15 million because he was caught off guard. Now, imagine a different owner who has completed this assessment. When the private equity firm starts probing for weaknesses, this owner isn't scrambling. They can confidently slide their own data across the table and say, we have already done the operational due diligence. Our management team runs the P&L independently. Our client relationships are institutionalized. Here is the proof.
That is a massive paradigm shift. You are literally giving the owner the answers to the test before the examiner even walks into the room.
Exactly.
But when should an owner actually pull the trigger on this? Like, if I'm thinking of selling in 3 years, is it too early?
3 years is actually ideal. But at a bare minimum, this assessment should absolutely be done 12 to 24 months before going to market.
Why so far in advance?
Because discovering that you have a gap in leadership independence isn't something you fix over a weekend retreat. Closing these operational gaps takes real sustained time.
That makes sense.
Developing a management team to handle P&L authority, transferring key client relationships so they trust your VP of sales as much as they trust you, documenting years of strategic knowledge. None of that happens overnight. Measuring early is what gives you the runway to actually fix the flaws before buyers can penalize you for them.
And does this only apply if you are aiming for a massive private equity payout? What if an owner is, planning a management buyout, or just passing the company down to their kids.
It applies across the board. The fundamental requirement remains the exact same, regardless of who the buyer is.
Really. Even for family.
Even for family.
Yeah.
The new owners, even if they are your own children, need to know that the business can survive and thrive without you pulling all the strings. Transferability is not just a private equity concern. It is the absolute foundation of any successful transition.
It really comes down to an ultimate choice, doesn't it? You can measure your operational readiness right now, figure out exactly where the engine is sputtering, close those gaps on your own timeline, and eventually walk into that negotiation room from a position of absolute power. Yes.
Or you can just cross your fingers, rely on your past financials, and discover all your operational flaws during the buyer's due diligence when you have zero leverage, zero time, and millions of dollars on the line.
That's the reality of it. And I want to leave everyone listening with one critical question to mull over today.
Go for it.
Imagine your business is acquired tomorrow. What is the single piece of operational knowledge that, if it walked out the door with you, would cause the entire operation to grind to a halt within a week?
Wow, that is a terrifying but entirely necessary question to ask yourself. And look, if you are ready to stop guessing and start measuring your exit readiness right now, you need to visit successionstrengths.com or email info@successionstrength.com. Do not wait for a buyer to find your blind spots. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Please be sure to follow the Transfer Ready by Succession Strength podcast for more conversations on exactly what it takes to truly prepare your business for a flawless succession or sale.